Hello, and welcome to the State of the Town 2011. I'm Jared Rosen, the Andover High School Liaison to the School Committee.
And I'm Lydia Messler, President of the AHS Student Government.
Today we got a great show for you. We're having a forum with some of the town's most important individuals. We have the Superintendent of Andover Public Schools, Dr. Marinelle McGrath.
Hello.
And we have the Town Manager, Mr. Buzz Stepchinsky. Thank you both for coming out here today.
Thank you and for inviting us.
Yeah, great pleasure.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah.
So we're going to start off and talk a little bit about your roles that you have in the town. Buzz, would you like to?
Sure. Well, I'm Buzz Stepchinsky. I'm Town Manager in Andover. And I've been Town Manager here for going on 21 years. And over the course of the years, we've been very successful in doing some really creative things with Andover. Most recently, the big news is that we're a green community. We were working towards that status for several years, and last year at the annual town meeting, we had to pass a bylaw that had to do with the zoning bylaw. We were, the building code. We did that, and we had to guarantee that we would purchase energy, efficient, fuel-efficient vehicles. We did that, and a number of other hoops we had to jump through. We had to provide reports about our energy conservation and all that kind of thing, how we're dealing with our buildings and our in the physical structure of the town. And we were one of 34 communities in the Commonwealth awarded the green community status. And that's been really good for us. It's opened up some grants. We just got a grant to do a roof and some repair work at West Middle School. So it's been very, very helpful to us. In fact, some of you may have seen the new vehicles we have running around town for the plant and facilities tradesmen. It's a small Ford Transit. And I think we were one of the first communities in the Commonwealth to buy those small fuel-efficient vehicles for our tradespeople. So that's the kind of advances that we've been making over the course of the last year and will continue to make. Also, the good news this past year for us was obtaining AAA status from Standard & Poor's. Now, what's that mean? When we go to the bond market, like all municipalities do, we have to have our bonds rated. And we received the highest rating from S&P, from Standard & Poor's, that's a AAA. So somebody who's buying bonds on Wall Street or in New York or California or wherever, they know that Andover is a very, very good credit risk because our rating is so high. So that helps us get bonds at a cheaper price. And it also validates the good work that goes on in Andover because S&P is a independent third party that comes in and rates any and all municipalities. So it's nice to get that kind of affirmation from a third party about the town budget and the management and the way we're doing our business. So those are just a couple of really good things, good news things that have happened this past year.
Dr. McGrath?
Hello and thank you. For me, it's a homecoming for me this year that I was appointed superintendent, began in July, after being gone for 8 years in another community. And in coming back for this year, it was wonderful to see really the same high-quality staff that we have, the engaged students that we have within the system. We also had a number of grants that helped to us to continue on in our curriculum. The PEP grant, a lot of kids are actually having some great programs at the elementary, middle, and high school through the physical education grants. I know the yoga class seems to be a #1 hit with a lot of people. We had the Teaching American History grants. We also had grants that helped us with our science, math, and technology. So those are items that have been really, great. In order to, get back into the swing of things, that we've continued with the development of the strategic plan, which was a really tremendous project that the school system took over, underwent last year. And Dr. Susan Nicholson had headed that up, and so we've been working together to bring that to completion. Right. It's still not completed, but we hope that it will be completed by the time we start school in September, which will be a great way to start the year and use that as a foundation document since it's so very important.
Good. Well, we would like to start off by asking you a few questions. Dr. McGrath, I'd like to start off with you. So when you first accepted the job as superintendent of the Andover schools, you must have had a vision. And so what was that vision? And then how did you set some goals for yourself?
The vision actually was set by the community, and it was one that was compatible with mine, because one doesn't come in and sort of, in the first, few weeks, put their sort of own vision there, but really takes what the community has put, forth. And very much in Andover, the vision has been that there be a very collaborative working relationship between and amongst teachers, staff, students, parents, and community. And that was really one of that came out through the community meeting that people held last year. Also, part of that vision very much is that the high expectations for learning for our students, and that it's not a learning or the way in which we teach students isn't sort of based in sort of how I learned as a child or how Mr. Stepchinsky learned as a child, but really what it is that you're going to need for your future. And that vision very much is dependent upon making sure that you have the critical and creative thinking skills, the problem-solving skills, the collaboration skills, so that you can be not only good students in our schools, but that you're going to be very capable people who can adjust to any kind of a situation in your futures. So that particular vision I subscribe to very highly, and that we will work towards, and I think we made some gains even in this year's budget that's going forth for that. And then our goals essentially are to have the students, as I said, the good, strong thinkers and creative people that we want to see. We want to be a model school district. We want to have a very high-quality staff, because if we want the very best for our students, we have to have the very best in our staff. And we also have to look at how do we deliver all of those programs in a cost-effective way, so that we can make sure that we have all the innovation that we need, but as well we're fiscally responsible to our town and our taxpayers.
Now, this sounds great in premise and everything, but
How does it really work?
the budget for 2012, I know, is accounting for a lot of reductions across the board on the town side, on the school side. Would you care to give us a little bit of insight as to what is some of the significant things that have been cut from the budget from the town side first?
All right. Well, first of all, you have to understand that the development of a budget, whether it be a family budget or a corporate budget or a municipal budget, is a year-long enterprise. It just doesn't start in February and end at town meeting. It's something that we do every day. Budget development is part of the normal course of our doing business. And in many respects, the budget that we have today started 10 years ago. I mean, the recession that we've been in for 9 and 10 really is a continuation of recession that we were in 2002. And in 2002, in fiscal year 2002, we saw a reduction in state aid, we saw a reduction in building permit activity, we saw a reduction just across the board. So we started preparing then 10 years ago for reductions, and we've cut back every place we can think of. But whenever we have a vacancy, an opening, we're thinking through whether or not we actually need to fill that job, because for both the school department and the town departments, our single biggest cost is labor. Our single biggest cost is the personnel expenses.
Right.
And so whatever we can do to be efficient in terms of how we use our staff, to be efficient in terms of how we use technology, has really been at the forefront of our minds over the course of the last 10 years. So to get us to this year, some of the things that we've done specifically this year is we've consolidated the town and the school's IT department. Actually, it's the town, the library, the public safety, the GIS, the Geographic Information System out of the DPW, and the town's infrastructure for technology, along with the school's infrastructure for technology, into one department. And we did that on a cost-neutral basis. In fact, we're going to have to eliminate one FTE through the course of this next year. So that was crafted, and it took a lot of work. The job still isn't done yet, but it'll take a lot of work going forward. The same thing in every single department I could name something, but the one that seems to be popular now is in the library. We're going to self-checks
Self-checkout,
for the library,
saw that.
and we're
I've used it, it's
reducing
good.
2 part-time positions to FTEs to be able to afford to do that. That's one example. We have vacancies, and there's so many little things. Elder services, somebody's retiring out of elder services. We're taking that, the FTE, full-time equivalent, those hours, and we're distributing some of them amongst the staff, all right? And then we're going to distribute some of them so that we don't hire a full-time person, but we'll hire a part-time person to fill the vacancy. So, I mean, virtually every single department, whether it's police, fire, you name it, we're doing something to rethink how we are providing our services. And in many cases, we're rethinking it by holding back on hiring, and you know, the watch how we use overtime, those kinds of expenses, as well as really restricting the expense budgets for every department, so that the department heads have to think creatively about how they provide the wherewithal that they need, whether it be salt and sand in the DPW or the book budget in the library or whatever. And the other creative thing that we've forced departments to do is to think about what they can do to raise their own revenues. So for instance, youth services, they get a budget of $300,000 from the town. But at the same time, through user fees, they raise another $300,000 or $400,000. So it's really a $700,000 department that only costs the taxpayers half of that. And elder services, the same kind of thing. Recreation, Department of Community Services, I mean, they're huge. They have probably a million, a budget that's ultimately $1 million, $1.2 million, and we only give them $114,000. But they turn that around by way of user fees into a variety of programs that touch, I mean, all families in town can take advantage of what they offer, and it's all based on user fees. So a lot of the programs we have in town aren't even funded by the tax dollar; they're funded by the users, and we're going in that direction more and more.
Well, isn't a user fee sort of a type of tax, though? I mean, it's directed only to people who are using the service, but it's still a fee that has to be paid by the public.
Well, a very good observation. The difference between the user fee and the tax is the tax is a universal charge,
Right.
all right? And the user fee is obviously based on the user. So, for instance, one of the complaints that we have in town from the elderly is that it's very expensive to live in Andover. So what we try to do, you know, for them is say, okay, well, you know, some of the services that you might want to use, maybe you don't want to go to New York City on the bus for the weekend with DCS, right, you know, or whatever, but the library, basically a free service, all right? Or we discount the price of the meals that are offered at the senior center. So we take into account that yes, you could view the user charge as onerous, and we try to do what we can to assist the people who really, truly need those kind of services but may not have the resources in order to pay for them.
And there's also the tax program, the tax abatement,
Oh.
that one, which is wonderful, because in the schools, we benefit greatly by having many volunteers in the school.
Right, okay.
Yeah, we have 240 individuals who participate in what we call the SCRIPT program. They participate and they get an abatement on their real estate taxes, and as a result, we get 100+ hours of people. And as you
So
know,
it's an
Dr.
FTE
McGrath
that you don't have
said,
to pay for.
they work in the schools, in the library, they're even in my office, and I'm sure they're working in the school offices. So that's a huge program for, you know, the senior citizens in our community.
Okay, so you were talking about how the department heads have to creatively work within their budget. So I think that feeds into the school budget and how you've had to creatively work within that. So can you explain your budgeting process this year?
The budgeting process for the schools, you know, begins at the schoolhouse level, and the principals talk with different teachers, and they begin to build, you know, what are the needs of the students. Principals then come and we hash that all out at our level, and then we begin to work with the school committee and with our finance liaison from the town, as well as the selectmen. This year, the school committee for the first time had a budget subcommittee that actually went through the budget in a lot more detail and became very knowledgeable about it so that they could help, you know, in terms of the advocacy for the schools. When it comes to the creative parts, what we have to do, we were having the discussion this morning that if we have a teacher who goes out on a leave of absence or there's a person who retires, that most of the time we have to fill that position because there's a direct service to students in the classrooms. So when we have to make reductions, and the majority of our budget is, labor intensive because it's teachers,
Right.
it's
a
instructional
service.
assistants, it's a service as well, that we have to really think, again, where our creative thinking has to come in is that how do we keep the same quality of our services, but begin to look at how we deliver those services in a different way. And are there more cost-effective ways to do that? So, and it's always very emotional because people have strong relationships with their teachers, parents have strong relationships with their teachers, and they know that there's going to be a loss for their children, but at the same time, we try to think about how to sort of mitigate, any loss in terms of program quality. So that's a real challenge for us. As we know, we are going to have some significant reductions this year. At the high school, we're going to be redesigning how we deliver our special education services. At the middle school, the look forward plan on that is that while we will lose 3 guidance counselors for this next year, it's a transition to knowing that we really need to have social workers in those positions. And we were able to retain our team concept model, which I'm sure you went through in the
Yep.
schools in Andover. And we know that the team is central to a student. And
Right.
so you have those 4 teachers plus a special education teacher on the team.
Right.
And, you go to those team teachers first with any kind of issues or
Well, it's a
problems that you
transition
have.
from
It's a transition.
from the small class in elementary school, larger in middle school, and then finally the full-size high school.
Right. So we have social workers in the school. I don't want to underestimate that it's going to be a challenge for everyone, and it's going to be difficult to work through that. But as we have said to our Board of Selectmen and to our finance members, that we'll be back next year with, social workers that we're looking to put into those
Right.
situations.
Now, is the middle school foreign language department going to remain as it is right now, or is it?
That's
going
going to
to undergo some
change,
changes.
as well. I mean, we actually added FTE, we added a part-time teacher to the foreign language at the middle school in order to make the sort of future model going forward, that we want to move to a strong model of proficiency where a student becomes fluent in the
Yes.
language. And we've had the exploratory program in the 6th grade with 3 languages where really it's an introductory. And foreign language teachers for a long time have wanted to have a really strong, more rigor and relevance in the foreign language study, and that while it's difficult to switch to one language in 6th grade, that's a way, sometimes you have to start to do something in order to make some changes. So we are looking to have Spanish in 6th and 7th grade next year. We'll continue with the French, Latin, and Spanish in 8th grade. And we'll have a task force that will begin this spring. We've already started working with some foreign language teachers to really decide what should be our 2 languages in the middle school. And we want to see the language actually begin in kindergarten. And so how would we put together a long-term, plan so that we could actually realize that for our students?
Good.
Now, for the high school this year, what are the big changes that are going to happen?
The big changes are in the special education delivery services.
And also on that topic, are the services going to be changed at all, or
They
the way
will
they
be
are delivered?
changed in that we will still have, I think there's some misperception that there won't be an inclusion model anymore for special education students, but that will also still continue. We also have classroom teachers who are supported by instructional assistants that there are varying opinions on that, and there are different, right now there is skepticism as to whether or not that's in the best interest of the students. I have tremendous faith in our teachers that while this is very difficult to transition through this, that in the end we know that even when we've had other adverse reductions, that our teachers always, put the students first.
Right.
And that in the end, when September rolls around, that people know this is what I need to do, and they do that, and that's a credit, to them. But it, will be difficult. We have people who are nervous. We do have in the budget some contingency available that in the event that we do find, once the students are all scheduled, that we do need some additional teacher, FTE, that there will be funds that I can go to the school committee and ask for that. So it will be a time for change, but I think
Right,
that I have
right.
faith that everyone has the same vision and mission.
So there's been the term the bucket model has kind of been thrown around a bit this winter. And I was hoping one of you could clarify what the bucket model is and what some other models for funding are.
Well,
For the special education.
Yes, for
I know
special
that there's
education.
been a lot of talk as far as the regular education part of the budget and the special education part of the budget, and special education part of the budget as far as transportation goes and a lot of other facets of delivering the program are very costly, and it's very difficult for the school committee and the town to fund this appropriately. So
I'd be happy to. The budget model, you have to really start with the budget model. Okay, our budget model is not unlike most other municipalities. In 1981-82, Proposition 2.5 came in, and all of a sudden, revenues were limited. Before that, revenues was really an open-ended item subject to whatever was voted at town meeting. So with Prop 2.5, we can only increase the whole budget 2.5% plus any new growth. So Andover's over the years have been blessed with considerable new growth. It's come at an expense, but nevertheless we've had the new growth. So we always start with the budget model, and we look at our revenues. We take out our fixed costs, health insurance, principal and interest, those kinds of things, and then whatever's left, after we subtract that, we have an amount that's available to spend for the operating budget, the town and the school department operating budgets. When we first developed the budget model, the fixed expenses were called the bucket. I don't know why, but they were called the bucket. And in the bucket, things have gone in and out of the bucket. What's pretty much stayed in the bucket over the years has been health insurance, principal and interest debt service on these buildings that we have, that sort of thing, and a variety of smaller kinds of expenses. For a period of time, we did have special needs in this bucket, or in a considered fixed costs. We took it out a couple of years ago, and the idea was that it was all about accountability. When it was in the bucket, when it was part of fixed costs, the feeling was, who was controlling it? I mean, it was well, whatever it is. We'll just let it rise and fall to whatever extent it does. The idea by taking it out and putting it back into the school budget was that if there is if there is a budget need, it needs to be explained. It can be explained better there than as a fixed cost. And if there's ways that the school committee can find some savings, or the school administration can find some savings within their departmental budget in total, then they get the advantage of saving it out of SPED or moving money around, into SPED. From where I sit, I think that's worked pretty well. They may get, a difference of opinion from the superintendent or from a school committee person, but I think that allocating, in terms of cost allocation, in the so-called fixed cost or bucket, we have almost no sort of departmental expenses in there. SPED was, or is, a departmental expense. Now, if you want to go to, start putting other kinds of things into the fixed cost, you could say, well, the town could
The
put
entire
snow and
budget
ice.
could be a fixed cost.
What's that?
The entire budget could become a fixed
Well,
cost.
you could say that, or snow and ice, because
Right.
sometimes, we, in the snow budget, like this year, we had, 90 some odd inches, we were over budget. Next year, we could be under budget. In fact, just on that point alone, we've done studies over the last 25 years, and we average 50-50. Half of the years we're over the snow budget, and half of the years we're under the snow budget. It's amazing how Mother Nature works. But anyway, so hopefully that'll answer your question, but the idea was for, I think, greater accountability, greater budget control, was to put the SPED costs in their full entirety into the school budget.
Right. And they weren't all, when there was the bucket model, it wasn't all of the special education costs. They were the extraordinary transportation, and the out-of-district
Right.
tuition. Because that's sometimes that we will incur one of those expenses that can happen at any time during the year, that a student may move into the town, or there's just a need that a student has to, can no longer provide the services within our town, and so those aren't budgeted. And so it's not like it's all the special education expenses that would go into that model. And there's research, actually, the committees are doing research now about, is that a way, should we return to a bucket model? Lexington has just put out a whole another way that they're looking at creating a stabilization fund for those extraordinary types of special education expenses. So we will be doing more research in terms of what is the
Right.
best way for us to all manage those expenses.
Right. No, we're actually running a little low on time, but I'd just like for both of you to give a little
Yeah, I
insight.
have one last question for you. So, what do you want the voters to know most when they go to town meeting later this month? So, what is the one thing you want them to know before they go?
Why don't you go first, and I'll...
Think about
Time
that.
to think.
I want them to know that the future of our schools are very important, and we know that that's a value of our community. And I hope that they will come to the town meeting knowing that everyone has worked very hard to come to the solutions for this year's budget, that there will be people who are disappointed, with respect to what decisions have been made, but there are other people that will be thinking that we did an okay job, and there will be some that will think, there'll be varying opinions, but I think people need to come participate in the town meeting knowing that we have looked at a wide variety of inputs, and that it is a very difficult task to really balance all the needs of a community.
There's one thing I've always been a strong proponent of is capital improvements across town, in the schools. I want to make sure that after I graduate from here, Andover High School, I want there to be new things going on, new programs, stuff that's new for educational purposes. What's going on as far as capital improvements this year?
Well, let me tie that in, if I can just carry on with the theme that Dr. McGrath started with, and then I'll get to the capital as well.
Right.
The thing I'd like the voters to take to town meeting with them, not only the Finance Committee recommendation book, of course, that's important to have with them, but
That would be helpful.
the notion that the theme that I've had with my budget this year, every year when I put out a budget, I have a theme. And one year I had Bob Seeger's, against the wind kind of thing. And, I didn't do you can't always get what you want, but I'm thinking of that probably next year. But no, so this year is we're all in it together. And one of the things I emphasized in my budget message in early February was to try to get to an agreement before the 11th hour of town meeting. We had the history of playing a lot of cat and mouse, playing a lot of games, running in a lot of circles, spending a lot of time, and bringing it right up to the 11th hour. At 6 o'clock, 6:45, we would have these meetings in front of the stage, and some kind of compromise would be worked out. Sometimes they were good, sometimes they were bad, but it always felt terrible because it was last-minute stuff. And I was pushing hard to make sure we didn't do that, and I think the voters should understand that the school committee, the finance committee, and the board of selectmen worked very hard up to a meeting at 7 a.m. this morning to come to agreement way before, 2 weeks before town meeting. That's huge. That's a major
So what are we at?
cultural shift, right, in the way we're doing business. And I
Good.
want to applaud Marinelle and her leadership, Dennis Forgan his leadership, Alex Foley with his, and Joanne Martin with hers, to bring the groups together and have this resolved, the budget issues resolved 2 weeks before town meeting. That's huge. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that with regards to capital, you're lucky you're living in Andover, because one of the hallmarks of the Finance Committee has always been, in my 20 years and years before that, has always been capital, the capital needs of the town. There are some towns, I won't name them, that rob the capital every year to fund whatever. You could write the script on what they would fund. Andover has had the foresight to put money aside. In fact, that's one of the questions that S&P would ask us. What is your capital plan? If we didn't
Right.
have a capital plan to look at replacing roofs, to look at replacing the Ballard Vale Fire Station, to look at replacing the town yard, we're calling it Municipal Services Facility, to look at a youth center or other kinds of things, they wouldn't give us a AAA bond rating because they say, well, you guys are flying by the seat of your pants. You don't have a 2-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. So that really has been to our benefit across the board and in getting things done. So.
Now, would
And
you
it-
just like to talk briefly about?
That was in our
Yep.
part of the capital plan is the part of the exciting aspect of what we have going forward, that we have school articles that have to do with maintenance and school maintenance and everything that Mr. Panadosi heads up. But the exciting parts for us are under our technology CIP, which is the capital improvement plan, and our textbook capital improvement plan. And under the technology, we do have funding for leases for one-to-one computing, the iPads or slates, whatever, becomes available to us and is the least expensive. The laptops for high school teachers for more integration, and ACE and all of our PTOs and service organizations in town. Rotary has been the first one to step
Right.
up to the plate to really have a good campaign to increase the number of interactive whiteboards in our middle schools and our high school.
Right, the smart boards.
The smart boards. Well, that's the brand name, so I try to use interactive whiteboards.
Yes.
So that's going to be, I think, quite exciting. And the other part is that we have some federal grant money still
That's good.
that we are not going to assign to positions, because with the federal money, if you buy positions, then you have to replace them. We're going to use those for innovation funds, so teachers can write for grants to really experiment and try to get some pilots going with how to use this technology to support student learning, to see how do we begin to sort of look at our campuses as a permeable kind of campus, that not everything has to happen within our 4 walls, but
Yes.
what else can we do to really, engage more in the online, world, open source world, but actually get those tools into students' hands to see what kind of experiments and what we can learn about student learning in a different way.
Yes,
So
exactly.
I'm quite excited about that part of the budget.
Well, that concludes our forum today. I'd like to inform everyone out there to please go to town meeting. It is April 27th and 28th, 7 o'clock in the Collins Fieldhouse, I believe.
Yep.
And make sure you go out there and vote. It's really important to support the budget of the town, the school committee, their budget, and everything. So thank you very much for watching the State of the Town 2011. I'd like to thank our guests, Dr. Marinelle McGrath and Town Manager Buzz Stepchinsky, for coming out here today. Thanks.
And thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yes.
This has been
Yeah.
great. Nice job.
Shared media, very good.
And I'm Jared Rosen.
I'm Lydia Messler.
Thanks for watching.
Don't forget to participate.